Aloha. After taking some time off, I had been analyzing and going over a lot of the subjects that I've been mentioning on this channel. And it's there's so many different perspectives that you can come from that what tends to happen is that people get lost in the exchange of information, and a lot of the times don't really see what's really being said, because the exchange of information becomes something else. And that something else is actually equivalent, or it's very similar to like the public education system. Like they tell you you're going to school to learn something, to become something more, to evolve your intellect, your consciousness, and so on and so forth. But we all know the intent and the design of the public education system. And just imagine how complex it is. Look at your administrators, your counselors, your principals, your vice principals, your security, your PE, your academies. You have your different classes, history, biology, chemistry. You have all this structure of what we believe to be the most evolved way of being in this experience. But it's not. We know it's not. Even the people who defend this system know that this system is not the so-called best there is. It's not the best we could do. So if that's the case, then that means there's an intent in keeping things the way that they are, which is completely out of balance, destructive on every level, and set up in a way that people enslave themselves. I've been watching, and I recommend check it out too. I know people don't watch television too much, but I've been watching a Netflix TV show, or a Netflix show called Hell on Wheels. It talks mostly about the railroad and so on and so forth. The clip I used in this video explains the perspective that the atmosphere of that consciousness at that time frame was. Like how was the enslavement of today first seeded? How was it constructed? How is it maintained? How has it grown on its own? And how does it still exist today? I've said this in other videos. Your civil war was no different than the war on terrorism. It was a distraction to distract you from a deeper truth. Obviously, before we move on, before you start to pride yourself in, oh, this country freed the slaves, this country broke away from England, you really think it's that simple? Some people do. Mostly because the pride in that world, in this world, has far surpassed the need to address and acknowledge that deeper truth. And you have the writings. You have the writings of these people, their psychology, of dominance, control, genocide, biochemical warfare, dropping bombs, a complete slaughtering of a people, not only in this nation, but across the world. This is a disease. It's a spiritual imbalance. When people say you have a chemical imbalance like in your brain, well, there's a spiritual balance in your soul. And the further and further you allow the chemical imbalances to consume your reality, the deeper and deeper you get into an artificial reality that will eat itself through your own experience. And the host of that parasite will also die. The individual is not there anymore. This is what happens when your culture is destroyed, demonized, when your perspective of yourself is empty, less than human, an animal, savage, a creature, heathen. These were the terminologies used. This is the psychological warfare that this system is trying to defend itself against being revealed. Talking about black versus white, that's nothing. It's nothing compared to the psychological, the chemical, and the spiritual imbalances that are running rampant through each and every buddy, especially the people who do not acknowledge this reality, because that's the way it maintains its strength, through the subconscious avoidance, the subconscious deflection. These gaps in our reality, our lack of the ability to challenge ourselves to find a deeper truth. Like your society, this society, not only in the United States, but across the world, this is not a civilization. It never has been. It never will be. The way society is running today, this is the Old West. We're living in the Old West right now. This is the New West. When they were putting that railroad down, they told you they were doing it for the betterment of the new world, for the civilized people. But what were they really doing? That was a war for land. Psychological and physical warfare and spiritual warfare. The religion being installed into your communities, installed into the slaves' minds, installed into the land and the indigenous people. That was a parasite. It still is a parasite.
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God, and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. And that's what Christmas is all about.
You hear that, boy? That's what Christmas is all about.
Actually, Granddad, Christmas is a pagan holiday, and Jesus probably hates you for celebrating it.
There ain't gonna be no Scrooges in this house, boy.
Look, Granddad, it's clear from the scripture that Jesus was not born in winter. The shepherds who saw the angels announcing his birth would not have been out in their fields in December. The Palestinian winters are too cold, if you believe in that sort of thing. The truth is, Christmas evolved from the Roman holiday Saturnalia, a winter festival where men gave gifts to each other. They also would get drunk, have sex with each other, and beat their wives. People would act so crazy on Christmas, the holiday was outlawed by the Protestant Church until the 1800s. As a matter of fact, the United States Congress... Granddad? Granddad!
I'm sorry, boy. What was that?
I just explained the entire history of Christmas.
But it was boring, Huey. You just blah, blah, gay sex, blah, blah, Congress.
It was designed to lock down your connection, your true connection with the Most High, and create limitations under the guise of connection. That's the spiritual warfare that's still alive today. It happened during and after your Civil War, when they were building these railroads and marching across the lands, saying that they were coming in peace to bring civilization to savage people. This is what this society is built on today. And this is still what's going on today. Today we call it gentrification. Today we call it the new way. We call it what? Social media. Everything in this society is a litmus test. Everything. Thanksgiving, holidays, Christmas, the education system, politics, so-called alternative news, conspiracy theories, false flags, military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex. What is it that you are proud of? People who are trying to protect this so-called Western civilization. What do you think? This is what it really boils down to. What do you think is the core of your pride in the way of the world of today? Acknowledging everything that sits at the foundation of this world. Well, they tell you, the people who are calling the shots in the psychological programming, they tell you. Alex Jones wears it like a badge of honor when he says 1776 will commence. You don't need solid proof, whatever that is, of these individuals being a controlled opposition. Just listen. What are they saying? But most importantly, what are they not saying? You can speak, you can yell, you can talk, you can say so many truths. You can put all that information out there. But if you consistently don't say certain things, that's just as heavy, it's just as important as what is being said. This is one reason why I focus so much on the importance of acknowledging the human story and going into seeing what heliocentrism has done to the spirit of the people. What colonialism has done to the spirit of people, the souls of people. How heliocentrism fits into the colonial program, mindset. This whole evolution deal is one of the main things that maintains this pride. I can't have a conversation when I go out in public a lot of the time. Most of the times, once these conversations start to come to the surface, there's always going to be one person who says, well, don't you have a cell phone? Don't you have this? Don't you have that? We were talking about genocide the other day. And this little shit had the nerve, had the audacity to stare a Mexican woman in her face and basically try to bully her into accepting the situation for what it is because she has a cell phone. And this so-called society, this so-called civilization provided that for her. That's what these evil ass people are standing on. That's their foundation. That's not to say that these individuals themselves are evil, because you can be ignorantly evil. Your ignorance, your actions, unconscious, subconscious from the programming, those actions inherently can be evil. And that's the thing people don't really pay attention to. This is why I said it's so important to realize what's not being said in reference to whatever stories are out there. People talking about flat earth, conspiracy theories, false flags, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, prison industrial complex, military industrial, I mean, whatever perspective you want to talk about. Are you building in communication? Or are you just building some kind of wall, a castle to show how strong you are? What's being done? Back and forth, flattened globe. I see what that's for. I know what that is. I know what's going on. What's the end game with that? Asking yourself, asking me, I'm constantly asking myself, because it's forever evolving. But it will always be founded in the perspective of the deepest truth that I can come from. And that truth will get deeper as I grow older and more wise and communicate more and learn for myself. The so-called intellect, the education system of this society is not designed to do that. How I explained it to a friend of mine recently was being your own teacher. For example purposes, when you go to a school, you get 1 degree out of how many degrees that are out there? How much information that's available? Do you know how to build a house? Can you find water? Can you grow food? What is a mother? What is a father? What is a family? What is a culture? What is a community? Before any of those things are even brought to the surface of our reality, we are bombarded with the responsibility cast upon us by this society that is eating itself. And it's been going on for so long that people cannot at all even entertain the idea that the system itself needs to be held accountable for what it's become, where it came from, how it got there, and the injustices that have been carried out day after day, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, century upon century. Everything around you today is designed to program you. The current events of this reality are designed to distract you from the foundations of the pedestals in which these programmers stand upon. The system itself is the idol. People are worshiping technology, the university system, Neil deGrasse Tyson, mainstream science, patriarchal chaos. That's the idol of this reality. That's what people are worshiping. And that's where the pride comes from. You can hear it in the tone that these individuals take when they don't even question their reality. Of you looking somebody, even a family member, dead in their eyes and saying, hey, your entire perspective of the universe is a joke. Your entire perspective of yourself is a joke. Literally, to the parasites, the conscious parasites who have said, I don't care about anything that you have to say in regards to balances of nature, universal laws. Nothing. This is your new world. Your new world is based upon what we say. So here's your 13th and 14th Amendment to dig the hole deeper, to dig your psychological separation, your spiritual and physical separation deeper. Here is your Constitution. Here's your 13th and 14th Amendment. You want free slaves? You want us to free the slaves? Fine. We won't use that word anymore. Now, everybody is no longer seen as a free person and a slave. Now everybody is a civilian. What is that? A person of civilization? No, you're an involuntary. You went from involuntary slavery to voluntary slavery. When I mention something like white supremacy, when I mention any of the destructive natures of this worldwide society, that's when those trigger mechanisms kick in with people. The conditioning kicks in and they shut down. They don't listen to anything else, which is the intent. It's the design. So before we can even bring up the existence of the parasitic nature of this system, you're already hit with a gang of attacks about the language, the words, the perspectives that you used to make a point that in many cases exists outside of the level of consciousness of many individuals. So the defense mechanism to that is to fight. Take, for example, when you're sharing information with a very egotistical man, a very full of himself man. In this patriarchal society, this example, just see, because it's not just men, it's women do the same thing, and everybody does it in their own way, or has done it more obviously in their own way. When you bring an example, or you call somebody on their shit, or you prove somebody wrong in a sense, like you're sharing information that reveals them on many different layers, not just the topic, but themselves. This is what something like Flat Earth does. When you bring that up to somebody, a lot of people won't even entertain it because it hurts too much to know that you've been lied to. It's like as if your mother and father had lied to you your entire life. That's what this system is based upon. Putting itself out there to be your provider, your everything. And the Hegelian dialectic has been going on for a long time. People have been choosing between two bags of shit on purpose for centuries. The bread and circus in Rome. The taking of one idea and spreading it so thin that it doesn't even exist anymore. And when it doesn't exist anymore, a new world is created. So when the so-called colonizers, settlers, so on and so forth, they told you, hey, this is what civilized people do. You're going to have the majority of people look at them and say, you're full of shit. But there's going to be some people that are going to say, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. And as long as you're persistent, if you have even just a little bit of leverage, over time, it will add up. And eventually the psyche that has been presented to these individuals will become their reality. As long as the entire society around them is created to help that, facilitate that program. This is what happened when Catholicism was installed into South America, Central America, North America, Christianity across the world. This is what happened when they said these are the good guys and the bad guys in the Civil War. The good guys are the ones in the North. We are the ones who are good because the evil ones who are bad still have slaves. This is how the majority of people were seeded to believe that anything coming out of this consciousness is beneficial. So here you are, cheering on the slave owners of the North as we sit around our televisions or around a giant 100-yard American flag, cheering on the blood that those colors represent, the psychological warfare that those images represent. Everywhere you look, celebrating it, not knowing what to do, because we have given all of our power away to this system. For what? For what? The board itself is the focus. The game itself is the focus. If they've convinced you to pay attention to their distractions, they don't need to have a master weapon. They don't need to have the big bomb, the ma-bomb. They don't need to have, they can just bluff you into eternity. Bluff you into your own enslavement. Is there some kind of force that of course there is. There's always that. But when you have people who are empowered by the knowledge of this system, there's nothing that can stop you. Because every experience that you engage in is not based upon any movement within that level of consciousness. It's an expansion, it's a growth, it's a building that happens from the inside out. This so-called society, civilization is completely, it's devoid of that whole reality. Because once people start teaching themselves and acknowledging that there is information that you can learn from the inside out, that's when the injustices of this entire world, this entire civilized, so-called civilization, will not only be acknowledged, but they will be addressed. And you can look in the comment sections on the videos that I've uploaded on this channel. You can see there where the psyche of people is. Like I said, everything around you, everywhere you look, it's a litmus test. How many people are going to watch football? How many people are going to celebrate Christmas? How many people are going to line up around the block to go buy a phone? Camp out in front of Best Buy? How many people are going to buy this many turkeys? Are the sale of turkeys going down? These are all numbers for an alchemy, providing information to the system that lets them know when they have to enact a particular level of consciousness that will distract you from the level of consciousness that existed in the previous mind control programs. Once the amount of turkeys gets from 100 million down to 25 million turkeys, that's when this system will kick this thing into gear, this distraction. Here's Indigenous Peoples Day. Quiet them down for a little bit. Don't make it national. Do it state by state. How long will that take? Give them a president. Tell them they voted for it. But make it so we have 4 to 8 years to do whatever we want with whoever's in that office. It doesn't matter, because we can get what we need to get done in 4 to 8 years, and we can prepare to set up the next agenda under the next administration. This is how it's always been since they installed this mind control program of the so-called New World. People out here celebrating Make America Great Again. You're sick. You're infected by a psychological parasite.
Is a new birth of freedom. Not just the freedom of long-distance travel, but the freedom to choose your fate. The freedom to make your fortunes in this untamed land. And we cannot let that freedom be threatened by ragtag bands of marauding Stone Age primitives. But that is not to say that there is not a peaceful solution. If they will put down their sticks and stones and come into the fold, like this young man here, then we will talk peace. And look at him. Wearing our clothes, speaking our language, washed in the blood of our Savior. If these violent nomads roaming the plains are willing to do as he has done, then there is very real hope that our mission might be accomplished peacefully. If not, then they are the authors of their own destruction.
Your humanity has been removed by McDonald's Happy Meal toys. It's sick. The distractions. They can float anything they want into the sky. And they can tell you anything they want. And the status quo of people will go on and believe it. They'll add to the story and continue distracting themselves from the storytellers in the first place. They can tell you it's a rocket. They can tell you we're going to Mars. They can tell you we went to the moon. They can tell you the theory of gravity. They can tell you we broke the sound barrier. They can tell you whatever they want. As long as they're telling you and you're listening, it doesn't matter what they're saying. Because you're not thinking for yourself. People will not be allowed to think for themselves until they have first opened themselves up. You cannot open yourself up until you first acknowledge the injustices of the system itself. You're playing a Nintendo game called Revolution. If you think that you will still be able to hold on to this genocidal so-called civilization, you are truly sick if you do not acknowledge this system for what it is, what it was, and what it's trying to become. Listening to these controlled opposition, whether they know it or not, empty ass, infected people, listening to them is a barrier. It's a block. Yes, you can get information here and there. Yes, you can learn something. But if you stay standing on that wall, it will eat you. That's what this society is doing today. Once people acknowledge to the depths, through compassion, through empathy, once people acknowledge what has led up to today and confirm it and finalize it with the fact that this system, it's banking on not acknowledging that information to maintain control and power over the masses. Not only that, but to maintain control and power of the masses for years to come, until that perspective is acknowledged, maintained, and built upon from there. Nothing's actually going to change. You can present people with all the information in the world. It's not going to matter. You might create a few people here and there, a few leaders here and there who might do this and that and say that. It'll all run itself into the ground. 10 days from today, 10 years from today. People calling themselves, oh, this is the flat earth community. What does that mean? What is a civilization? People priding themselves. I was listening to this Math Powerland guy the other day. I almost fucking vomited listening to that arrogant piece of shit sit up there priding himself as he discovered the flat earth. He's the first one. Where the fuck do you get off? Who the fuck do you think you are? That individual is the example of everything I've been saying in reference to what happens when you only pay attention to the pieces on the board. You pride yourself in being a rook, a knight, a pawn. And you put on your Office Depot vest and you walk around and you yell at people painting or whatever the hell he says, photo or is sick. And when you have people out there doing that, he basically represents like the North in the Civil War. And then you have FEA or I don't know, whoever else is out there talking shit about flat earth. They represent the rebels, rebellion, the rebels. Oh, the rebels, Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? What land are you standing on? People get caught up in that bullshit. They watch that show. And they think it's real. Same thing happened with Mark and Patricia. People have been watching that show. I used to watch that show. They spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4, 5 hours talking about how important whatever it is that they're talking about is. Whatever it is, it's very important. What did they not talk about? Shuts down immediately. Once you start showing people their limitations in real time. I have no patience for that shit. I have zero patience for that. People are priding themselves in this sick ass shit. It's sick. You want to see the definition of a prideful parasite? Go watch one of Math Powerland videos and listen to how many times. Somebody make a compilation of how many times this asshole says the guy who started it all. Sound familiar?
And predisposed to violence. The Negro is an inferior race, but human nonetheless. That is why we fought your war, Mr. Bohannon. The Emancipation Proclamation, the Constitution, those are his rights.
It's the same effect as Alex Jones. Alex Jones has put himself out there as the foremost truther of the world. He supposedly broke Bohemian Grove, snuck in, and got a videotape. Oh, really? You did now? And what happened after that? Nothing. It was sugarcoating. These are pressure relief valves. Flat Earth? On the internet, on Google, that's a pressure relief valve. Barack Obama, your first black president, supposedly, whatever the fuck that means. After the most disgusting piece of shit out there, George Bush. 8 years of him, of it. Coincidence that you get a first black president after that? Not at all. Once the circus becomes it's not entertaining anymore, more distractions have to be created. The game has to be adjusted. The colors of the pieces on the board have to be changed, and the entire write-up of how it is needs to be mixed and matched and moved around. Mark and Patricia don't have the fucking slightest clue about the foundations of this, because they love this world. They're no different than me having a conversation with another native person over a fire, and some shit, arrogant asshole sits his ass down as we're talking about genocide, psychological warfare, destruction that surpasses what even animals won't even do. A lot of this shit that these parasitic ass people have done and are doing. We're sitting here talking about hundreds and hundreds of years of mind control, enslavement, not of only certain people, of the entire consciousness of this world. And you have this little piece of shit sit down and say, huh, pish tosh. You can't tell me you don't have a cell phone in your pocket right now. That's the argument. That's the argument of today. Debate that. Have a discussion about that. Build upon that. When will this be acknowledged? This is not to come down on anybody else talking about anything specific about whatever it is they're doing. I'm just sharing what I feel in my heart is the most important thing to start addressing before you start addressing. It's like going up and I said this in a previous video, when you walk up on somebody out in a battlefield somewhere and they're laying on the ground and you don't know what's going on. You have to approach these things in order. You check for the breathing, you check for the bleeding. You check for if they're in shock. You check for burns. You check for fractures. You check for, you go in order. Why would you start dressing a broken toe before you address the gushing wounds of this individual? or entire society. The intent of this system is to make you focus on the minor fractures so that the body of this parasitic consciousness remains untouched. And they can make a profit. They could put a water mill on the blood gushing out of somebody's chest. That's what's happening. And you start talking about breathing and bleeding when people are wearing golden suits and ties, talking about, I specialize in broken toes. I've been doing it for 40 years now. You can't tell me this is not important. This is not what we should be focusing on. Why? Because the system gave you a little piece of paper? Your revolutions are prepackaged, genetically modified. That's what this is. This whole society. Certified. Non-GMO. Organic. Bullshit. That's what this entire system is. Certified. Genetic, non-GMO, organic bullshit. And since it's organic and not non-GMO, people love it. And they'll protect it. Because people have been eating bullshit for a long time. This is not to say that the information that is being shared by people that has a particular focus doesn't mean it's not important, it's doesn't matter, and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is that eventually that breathing and that bleeding will need to be addressed. The earlier, the better, for obvious reasons. But since you can make a little bit of money dressing broken toes, fixing broken ankles, that'll keep people distracted. Everything that you see out in this so-called society is a distraction of the utmost. Bitcoin is like the railroad. We've gone so far from realizing the distraction that is the rebels versus the bluecoats. Gotten so caught up in that, we didn't even realize that the real war is fought in the psyche. So people are priding themselves in not being a Southerner, priding themselves in not being a Northerner. Time passes, land gets stolen, people get murdered and moved on to reservations. Cities get built. Families grow. Generations start to stack upon generations. And who writes the history books? How long will this go on? People already know what history in the education system is for. It's not to inform you. It's to indoctrinate you, obviously, at an early age, so that when you do become an adult, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know what an adult is. You have grown children. There's nothing there. Emptiness. People who are filling themselves with a parasitic idea of who they should be based upon what society has told them to be are dead. They're dead inside. And that's the hardest to dig yourself out of. It's the hardest place to dig yourself out of. And that's at the foundation of this psychological warfare. It's known. Just like the cell phone thing. People priding themselves in anything. Airplanes. whatever it is out there. You talk about genocide, you talk about broken treaties. You talking about convincing people that they're not even human. You talking about convincing other people that they're extra human. They are the supreme race. Everything else is inferior. They've worked out, just like gravity, the shape of skulls. Eugenics programming. They've written books of how inferior 9/10 of the people in this existence. They've written series of books about how inferior people are. 9/10 of the people on this earth at one time and still today, in many ways, were considered savage, heathen, primitive animals. And this is accepted today.
See, y'all think it's just about us in here, but this is about an oppressive, fucked up system designed to keep niggas down and shit. Y'all wouldn't know nothing about that. What about you, little nigga? You know about that?
Yes.
Oh, you know about that? Tell me what you know about that. Tell me what you think about that.
The prison industrial complex is a system situated at the intersection of government and private interests. It uses prisons as a solution to social, political, and economic problems. It includes human rights violations, the death penalty, slave labor, policing, courts, the media, political prisoners, and the elimination of dissent.
Nigga, did you just say what I was trying to say, but smarter? I like this little nigga.
That foundation is accepted and celebrated today. Your flag, your White House, your stock market. What was the first thing that was traded on the stock market? People. People were traded because they weren't people. They were seen as property, just as you are seen as property today, with your birth certificate, with your driver's license, with the alchemy of this so-called civilization that has convinced you that you are not anything other than what they have told you you are. And if you think otherwise, slave. If you question your reality that is not yours, if you question the reality that we have given to you, you ungrateful, heathen, primitive piece of garbage. If you dare question the intellect, the perspective we have evolved into your reality, the perspective that we have been given by the Almighty God. People tend to forget that. People tend to forget that where racism comes from, where this whole haves and have-not program comes from. Because some people said, we are better than you. Not just because I say so. We are better than you because God Himself said so. That's why we are better than you. And we will whip this into your back for centuries upon centuries, however long it takes to set in. Once it is set in, you will teach your children to accept this into your reality, or they will go through and suffer the same pain that you are feeling right now as we whip your back, rape your family, murder your babies. You will know our God, the only God. You will know the God of this book. By the end of the day. And if you don't, the end of the day will be your last day. And eventually, your offspring will submit to what we have discovered. We have discovered that you are less than an animal. You are my property. I own you. You will work to build this empire for me. And when we are done with you, if you say one word about what led up to this empire, we will strike down upon you with the utmost vengeance. Upon you and anybody else who attempts to question the reality we have given to you. Do not question our university system. These buildings were built in stone. We built these institutions in granite and marble. These libraries are lined in gold. How dare you speak to us in such a manner? This is New Rome. New Rome needs to be very complex. New Rome needs to be as chaotic as it is today. Otherwise, people will have too much time on their hands and will start asking questions. Too many questions being raised. Too many answers and unanswered questions out there is very dangerous to this system. So you will be bombarded 24/7. Commercials, music, the internet, television, cartoons, social media. This is not only a distraction, it is a litmus test. Like I said, everything is being documented. Moving from this currency situation, people priding themselves, like being happy about the next distraction. Each move that this system makes, going to the moon, that was a big move that it made. It made that move. 9/11 was a big move. Getting involved in Vietnam, these are big strategic moves. The war on terrorism, these are all moves. For what? Convincing you to not acknowledge the design of the currency system, the fiat currency system, and move into a digital currency system, cryptocurrency system. Even if you were to acknowledge the Federal Reserve as the criminals that they are, even if they were to be taken down like these pedophiles in this system are, they will still have the majority of people who don't know how to think for themselves, who will just accept whatever comes out of their mouths. Because they are empowered subconsciously and consciously by the word of God. This is why they say in God we trust. They put God on the money, they put God everywhere. Spirit, mind, and body. The soul, the mind, and the body. Each thing needs to be acknowledged for what it is. Just like I said, when you can drive down the street and see each fast food restaurant as a weapon against the people. You see that when you drive down, it's not that hard. See it. Weapons against the people. The system itself, people priding themselves in jobs. Oh, jobs this, jobs that. We need jobs. That's slavery. When you're focusing on jobs, and even when people have those jobs, don't have enough resources to make a decent living, they can't provide themselves with food, clothing, water, and shelter, protection, security. They can't provide themselves with that. You are not free. You are a voluntary slave, just as it is written in the 13th and 14th Amendment. So you have people priding themselves in documents that are designed to enslave and distract people. Start there. Then start asking questions about what's going on in this whole conspiracy theory world, truthers, and all this other stuff. Start there. Where did they even get the Constitution from? From the Iroquois Confederacy. Even that was stolen. Even that was stolen. So once you start to completely just like see this stuff for what it is, instead of just accepting it for what it is, you become a different person. Your future generations become a different consciousness. That can't happen for slaves. So they need to tell you that they're going to Mars. They need to tell you that Elon Musk is doing this and that. They need to tell you that you got your first black president and things are changing. They need to tell you that the best move to be made after recognizing an entirely corrupt Federal Reserve system, they need to tell you that the best move to make is just to make everything digital. And they need to convince you of why. Because if you're not convinced of why, you'll ask too many questions. Since this system needs to be so complex, they need a way to distribute that information, to funnel that information to people. Social media is this funnel. The mainstream media is this funnel. The education system is this funnel. Everything in this society is a funneling of your consciousness into a self-imploding, destructive, empty soul. Keep in mind, like I said, you think social media is for you. Understanding the intelligence and the bass awkwardness of this system. You think the internet just oops and slipped out? You think social media just oops and became what it is? That's the most ignorant shit ever. You think flat earth just oops and showed up on the scene? Oops. We started a civil war on some land we stole. Better take care of it and make sure the good guys win so that we are seen as so good. What we did to get here won't even be brought into discussion. We are empowered by the Almighty God to poison, destroy, and remove these people from their lands because we are superior in every way. By the hand of God, manifest destiny has been gifted to us. These savages deserve what we will bring to this land. By the edge of each sword, they will celebrate their own enslavement. On this day or the next, generations will come to be our defense. This is what today is. And this is what the bombardment of the parasitic laced information that is being filtered through mainstream media, through so-called alternative news, conspiracy theories, and the internet itself. This system is designed to maintain that. And it's only up to the individual to take it that far, to see what this is really meaning. They put a movie in the theater. You think that movie's for your entertainment? Knowing that psychological enslavement is the key. You think that movie, that Disney movie, is for the entertainment of your kids? Knowing what this society, this so-called civilization has done to get to where it is today. Knowing the crimes and the injustices that it has committed over the years. You think that stuff is there for you? Severely mistaken. But that's the thing. People don't have to actually say this. They just avoid it. That's my whole point. You don't actually have to say this. You don't have to acknowledge any of this. You just have to act like it doesn't exist. Go back to what you are focusing on. And if you are focusing on something that is in and around that circle, people will say that's good enough. That's fine. It's hard enough to talk about flat earth. I'm not going to go in and start talking about history. We need to just move on. Really. That's ultimately what people are saying. When people say something like, oh, don't you have a cell phone? Or why do you talk about racism and all this other stuff when you talk about flat earth? Inherently, they're saying, move on, Negro. Get your little Negro self out of this discussion. We're talking about the new world here. We're not talking about destroying the new world. How dare you? How dare you include racism, white supremacy, the actual historical events of this system? How dare you bring that information into this discussion? We're talking about truth. We're talking about the reality that God has created for us. Brothers and sisters of the congregation, we have discovered the flat earth. Please sit around this table and let's praise the Almighty God who created this earth for us and save those evil, primitive heathens from their own savage nature. We need to just take this new world, this new flat world, and we need to usher in a new way of thinking. We need to usher in. Hurry up and get it out there. Push it on out there. Wear some shirts. Get some hats. Put it out there. What are you putting out there? What are you actually saying? What are you saying? People been lying? No shit. You ain't telling us nothing we ain't never heard over and over and over again. We've been knowing this shit. The fact that they've been lying is only a surprise to the assholes who've been benefiting generations upon generations from this parasitic consciousness. And it's so much a part of their reality that even entertaining that idea is painful. And if it's painful, people will create systems to avoid it. Internal and external. Psychological, spiritual, and physical. What do you think that wall is for Donald Trump? You have the nerve to say that you have been empowered by the word of God to destroy people. And here we are, 500 years later, with this individual who has the audacity to say he will build a wall on the land that never was yours. This is the way the system works. It creates conversation pieces so far from the scope of the core of this situation. And people get so consumed by that reality that nothing actually moves for the benefit of the people. If something does move for the benefit of the people, it will be dealt with. Whether it's an individual, look at Malcolm X, or a group of people, look at the Black Panthers, and how this system created COINTELPRO.
I was a minority of maybe one in thinking that Watergate was a kind of a tea party. Actually, I was asked to write about Watergate right away by the New York Review, and I agreed, but I said I would write only if I could explain that it didn't amount to anything. In fact, it was pretty striking. The Watergate exposures came out at the very same time as the exposures of COINTELPRO. Same time. COINTELPRO was a massive government criminal operation directed against the population that went through 4 administrations, mainly Kennedy and Johnson, and Nixon started a little earlier. And it targeted virtually all critical thought and action for not only surveillance, but for disruption. It went way beyond the Snowden case. It went as far as literal political assassination. In fact, right at the time of Watergate, there was an exposure of the fact that in 1969, in one of the COINTELPRO operations, this is an FBI operation. FBI is the National Political Police. So they were trying to destroy the black movements, and they really decimated them. Mostly the worst case, which had just appeared at the time of Watergate, was the assassination of Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was a Black Panther, an organizer, a very successful organizer, no criminal charges, nothing like that. He was organizing in the Chicago ghettos. The FBI, under COINTELPRO, wanted to assassinate him. They tried at first to incite a criminal gang in the ghetto, the Rangers, Blackstone Rangers, to kill him. They sent false letters to the heads of the Rangers written in kind of fake black dialect, which they decoded instantly. The FBI is not very smart, to try to tell them that, that Fred Hampton was going to go after them, so they'd react, but they didn't. What happened is that the FBI had implanted an informer who was Hampton's bodyguard, and they gave false information to the Chicago police about guns in the apartment. 4 a.m., the police broke in, really a Gestapo-style raid, and just murdered him in his bed. That act alone just swamps all of the Watergate exposures. And interestingly, it was barely reported. And that's only one. I mean, they went a lot of other things under COINTELPRO, which was far more serious than Watergate, and I think more serious than the NSA.
And you think COINTELPRO just deactivated? You think it didn't expand into the internet that is today? You think if they were putting commercials and stuff back on TV back in the day to make you think and act a certain way, they was putting this shit on postcards, stamps. For people who haven't seen that video I put on here, research alligator bait. People who have know what I'm talking about. People making fun of talking about, I had this discussion the other day, and I'm going to close it out on this. For the people who are still getting butthurt about even mentioning racism, even mentioning the system of white supremacy. I didn't make this up. These people said these words. Not only said them, but they built upon them, carried out beyond that, and built an entire empire on this shit. Those videos you were listening to, that's their words, not mine. People are so enslaved in that parasitic consciousness, they will dive into a barrel of shit in order to dig their way out of it, just not to acknowledge that pain, not to acknowledge that system. Because if they acknowledge that, then they have to acknowledge a part of themselves that is so painful, so disgusting, that it can't be ever even spoken upon, ever. This world is built on blood. They talking about a different God when they say in God we trust. They're talking about a different God when they say God bless America. To do what? To take out Gaddafi? To destroy the rainforests? To poison the waters? Poison the air? Psychologically mind control your babies? Feed these kids to alligators? Look it up. Alligator bait. This discussion I was talking about, I almost got sidetracked from it. Somebody was telling me about whatever people come out with all this. All lives matter, blue lives matter. They're making a mockery out of acknowledging history. That is the mainstream defense mechanism. And they place themselves out to be the superhero in that situation. No different than they did with the rebels in the South and the Union, the Bluecoats. They said, we are more civilized than those down there. Here's your deciding factor. They like slavery 100%. We only like slavery 98%. You might as well just go ahead and choose us. This system is designed to maintain that kind of interaction, not only with other people, but with yourself. If you have a closer relationship with yourself that starts to reveal information about the system, you will inherently reveal information about yourself. That information will be naturally designed to expand your consciousness. But if people are so indoctrinated into a self-destructive system, being presented with that information will inherently hurt or implode people if they are not equipped to do something with that. The system knows this. It banks on this, which is why people are so bombarded with destructive information that's designed to weigh people down. Destructive perspectives that even if they give you the information, they give you proof that they've been lying for so long about the very nature of your universe. Even if they give it to you, it doesn't matter. You are so indoctrinated into their belief systems and their way of thinking that what they've given to you to think about is only going to be thought about in a way that benefits the system. They know this. This is why I said the amount of turkeys that are being sold every year is going down for Thanksgiving. The system knows this. And it makes its move based upon the psychological, spiritual, and physical awareness of these numbers. So when you have information coming through the internet, social media, that's supposed to be, ooh, Las Vegas, that was a false flag. Congratulations, smart guy. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, it was a false flag. Congratulations. What does that mean? What is a false flag? Who and what does the false flag? What's the intent of that? What is that trying to protect? Why does it exist? You can't make any money talking about that. You can make some money off of getting video images and putting them up there and saying, look at the angle of this bullet and that bullet going up, and there's people there. It was shooters up there, it was shooters down here. It's shooters all over. This is obviously not a one. They got you. They got you. Because it don't matter. It does not matter what it is that you're talking or thinking about. What matters is how and why. How you're thinking about what you're thinking about. Why you're thinking about what you're thinking about. How you're going to address it. And why you're going to address it or why not. People can't even entertain that. That's not where the big bucks are. The big bucks is in entertainment. The big bucks is in being surrounded by a bunch of people who kiss your ass all day. Run your numbers up. People living in a petri dish right now. A petri dish of information. Viruses, parasites, and all kinds of other nasty garbage is being put into that petri dish on particular time frames based upon the growth of the life in that petri dish. The information is designed to maintain control of the information in the consciousness within that petri dish so that it does not get outside of that petri dish. If people break free from that, the controllers lose control. You cannot break free from that petri dish if you are consumed by the distractions that they keep placing in this petri dish. You're not going to know what questions to ask because you consume your entire reality on the wrong damn questions. Ultimately, the wrong questions. Obviously, each question is helping somebody get closer to a deeper question. But like I said earlier in this video, once you start asking those questions and you get in the groove of asking that level of consciousness, it will eventually eat you. And you will cease to be. You'll be something else. And something else will start asking questions because something else has enveloped your reality. So I've mentioned this and I'll close it out. I know I said I was going to close out earlier. I just hadn't made a video in a while and didn't know how long this one was going to go. I just wanted to kind of piece all this stuff together and kind of share with people what I've been always saying. Because it's not a one thing. See, people get caught up in the comment section. They hear one thing, it makes them all butt hurt. They lose They lose what I'm talking about overall. They get distracted. This information ain't for me. I speak about this because I can't not speak about it. There's nothing else that I would rather speak about than the very nature of this system. It's not only in honor of our ancestors, our brothers and sisters of today, mothers and fathers, but as a responsibility to the future generations. If I'm not addressing this parasitic consciousness that has enveloped every corner of this earth in many different ways, if I'm not doing it for the babies who don't even know what to speak about right now, then I'm not really doing anything. They're the ones that are going to have to deal with this. Your little ass, your little silly ass is going to be dead. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years from now. You will be gone. And the only thing that will matter is what the future generations got from you while you were here. And if they got that fake, generic, genetically modified bullshit from you, because you chose to pride yourself, chose to make a little bit of money, no, you didn't sell your soul. You just put it on credit. You talking flat versus globe? You're talking distraction. You're talking about yourself. You talk about what this empire is built on. You talk about the past, the present, and the future, all as one. From the perspective of the soul, the mind, and the body. To include the psychological, spiritual, and physical mind control programs. Locking down of all the bodies. The emotional body, physical body, psychological body, spiritual body. Your relationship to nature. Your relationship to yourself. Once you start talking about that, in contrast to this parasitic consciousness that had created this empire that we're experiencing right now, once you start talking about that information, that's when you start communicating with the generations who aren't even born yet. That's when you start living for the generations who aren't even born yet. Until then, it'll just be a distraction. Your very life will be a distraction. Your soul, your mind, your body, everything is a distraction. I've gone on long enough. There's so much more that I wanted to get into. I didn't even touch the surface of the depths I wanted to go into this, but since I haven't really done any videos in a while, I think it's better to do kind of like an overview like that. And I'll get around to going into whatever's next when the time comes. But I needed a break. I might still just keep taking a break. But if you are making videos, if you are, having conversations with your family and friends, make the best of it. Don't waste, don't sell your moments to an invisible entity that told you to think and act a certain way. Just because everybody else does it. It's truly the living dead. So anyway, thank you for the support. Thank you for sharing the videos, liking the videos. The old subscribers and the new subscribers, I really appreciate the support. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.